Siobhan McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. For me, and I imagine for yourself, some of the debates and the issues we've been raising this afternoon were the ones that we were discussing back in 1997 and looking at how to tackle them. And while Nirvana never came, certainly progress was made in many of our town centres and our cities. And in a way, we have lost our way and forgotten what was successful, but we do know what worked. In my constituency of Mitcham and Morden, it is not a place that is unique. Over the last few years, we've seen a steep rise again in antisocial behaviour on our streets. We've always had our problems, but never before has antisocial behaviour, street drinking and petty crime felt as pervasive or hard to tackle as it does now, particularly around Mitcham town centre. I'm afraid the climate of antisocial behaviour has become so intense that the difficulties of suburban shopping centres have become so much worse. A multi-million-pound regeneration of the town centre should have meant that Mitcham had begun to get better. Yet when speaking with local businesses, I've been dismayed to hear stories of shop fronts being vandalised, staff being abused and intimidated, and once loyal customers choosing to shop elsewhere, feeling that their local town centre had become unsafe or was simply an unpleasant place to shop. Mums, and principally mums, did not want their children to be in an environment where men urinated in the street or who brawled because they had drunk too much. Antisocial behaviour is a problem that residents often feel powerless to change, but they are no means apathetic. When I welcomed Sophie Linden, London's Deputy Mayor for Crime, and Sally Benatar, our commander of our South West London BCU, because we no longer have borough police services in London, to a public meeting in my constituency last June, hundreds of residents turned up. The place was packed. They were spilling out into the playground outside. They stood for hours to make their point in the sweltering heat. And the concern raised time and time again is we just don't see our police on our streets anymore. We don't see the police community service officers who used to get to know us. We cannot get through to the police. For anybody who has tried to ring 101 knows exactly how difficult it is just to get the phone actually picked up. I'm afraid that so much in our town centres has begun to get work.
Very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. And just on that point of police officers, frequently it's said by somewhat older residents, I must say, that the previous police officers who were part of the community understood the community and they knew the stories behind what they were frightening. And clearly there's much evidence that says it doesn't matter having police on the beat. But actually, the truth is, police officers who understand their community have a community that understands the police officers as well.
And I completely agree with my honourable friend. We got that kickback in 1997-98, principally from the police, who felt that the best way to deal with crime was in fast cars. But the resulting reduction in crime that came about from the Safer Neighbourhood teams proved substantially that police on the beat and police community service officers, who were often originally rejected by the police and by the community, proved successful because they had the time to build the relationships and get to know people. And when people began, and particularly young people, as the honourable member referred to, began to get in trouble, they could bring those agencies together and start to get the support that many of those individual youngsters and their families desperately needed.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for allowing me to make this point, and I just wanted to get a point on the record because maybe she's somebody in her constituency who she thinks the same about. But I'd like to say a big thanks to PC Dave Pearson as a local beat manager, because he did a fantastic job and he sorted out a lot of antisocial behaviour, and he deserves me to put it on the record.
I'm delighted to be able to give way to my honourable friend, thanking our public servants and our police who go that mile to make our areas better is really important. All too often, disgraceful antisocial behaviour just goes unchecked. It goes unchecked because, well, it's not a serious crime. It goes unchecked because the local police team simply do not have the resources to follow up every last incident of vandalism or drunken hooliganism. It goes unchecked because we no longer have the bobbies on the beat to control it. But when a drunken altercation led to the tragic murder of a young man in my constituency last year, it served as a poignant, painful reminder that the gulf between antisocial behaviour and serious crime is not as large as we often allow ourselves to believe. Mitcham and Morden has been my home all my life, and I am so deeply proud of it. I sincerely want each and every one of my constituents to share the pride in our local area. But it can become desperately hard to ask them to do so when they do not even feel safe in their own community. The simple truth is, there is no substitute for visible police presence in the community. Mitcham needs more bobbies on the beat. I suspect we are often far from alone in that regard. We did not arrive here from nowhere, Madam Deputy Speaker. The rise in antisocial behaviour that we have seen in so many of our communities is the regrettable but inevitable consequence of more than 8 years of indiscriminate cuts and biting austerity at the hands of successive governments. In real terms, central government funding for police has decreased by 30% since 2010. We've lost roughly 20,000 police officers in that time, 14% of the workforce. In London, in the London Borough of Merton, a small suburban borough that is the third safest in London, we have lost 90 police officers since 2010. The safer neighbourhood teams that used to have 5 officers, a sergeant, 2 PCs, 3 police community service officers, are now down to 2 PCs and 1 PCSO when you can get them. Because when people go on long-term sick or have to move on to somewhere else, those vacancies are not filled. And the important Mitcham Safer Neighbourhood team has gone. There is now no longer a team for the town centre. And amazingly, the police officers we used to have based in every secondary school in Merton are also gone because the police cannot recruit quickly enough in order to fill those posts. Retention rates have plummeted because our police don't feel valued, and how could they when year after year they're being asked to take on more work with less support, fewer resources and, in real terms, lower wages. And I have to say, even when they are offered more money, it is difficult to fill those posts. Detectives in the Metropolitan Police area have been offered £4,000 a year more, but they still cannot recruit detectives. The consequence of that for our safer neighbourhood teams is that many of them are forcefully transferred into those roles and are not available to actually walk our streets and do the basic work of policing that we know our communities need. The Conservative Party has always taken great pride in its image as a party that would put the police first, come down hard on crime and keep the men and women of Britain safe. And yet, with police disappearing from our streets, violent crime on the rise, and many of us feeling more vulnerable than ever before in our communities, I find myself asking the same question as many of my constituents. Whatever happened to the party of law and order?